starting and we're live. So, hi everyone. Welcome to two of our experts here. We have Segun Famisa from Trivago and Moyin Adeyemi. She's also joining us from Off-Grid.
Hi.
So we're going on from questions posted on the question board. So if you feel like joining to ask questions, please, there's a link on the description. You can ask more questions. So I'm starting with questions. They've already been posted. So the question has 7 likes already. So I think it's good we start with that one. But before that, feel free to introduce yourself or speakers. Let's start with you, Moyin.
Okay. Hi everyone. I am Moyin Adeyemi and I work at Off-Grid Electric. I help them build their Android app, which serves as a tool for the agents. And I'm glad to be here today.
Okay, thank you. Segun.
Hi everyone. My name is Segun Famisa. I work at Trivago as a software engineer. I work on the Android hotel search apps.
So thank you very much for introducing yourselves. So let's dive into the questions. So the question with the highest vote was written by one Worry. Yeah. So the question goes like this. He said, considering the introduction of Kotlin as a new language for Android development, the Java they learned on Udacity, is it obsolete or they can still continue? So over to you.
Who wants to go first?
Yeah, so any of you, it's up to you.
You can go, Moyin.
Okay. Well, since they are just learning Android, I think it's best to focus on one thing at a time. So if it were me, I would focus on at least learning Android development to a certain stage before, with Java, especially if this is their first time learning to program. I would focus on learning how to program, how to build Android apps first before thinking about language. But if they have like a considerable amount of experience with Java already, then it will be good to start taking a look at Kotlin. But it doesn't mean that Java is going obsolete anytime soon, because Google is still going to support it. Google can't just decide not to support it again. It's still going to be in existence for quite a while. So I think if the fear is that after like 1 year, they won't be able to do anything again, then I don't think there's a basis for that. I think that they'll both continue existing side by side for a while. So if they are new to Android, focus on your Android. But if you done Java for a while, then maybe start taking a look at Kotlin.
Yeah. To add to that, Kotlin is even based on the Java virtual machine, which Java runs as well. So it's not as if they're replacing anything with Kotlin that you can't do with Java. So I think you're still going to be pretty fine with using Java to build apps.
Oh, so nice. So it means what they learned in the Udacity course is actually not obsolete. So you can still use it to build as many apps as you want to. So nice. So moving over to the next question. So the next question with 6 votes is by Jumalen. Oh, no. So skip that. Sorry. So Sadiq Oladeni asked a question that they're working on a project that requires a monitor to monitor a calling state using Android telephony feature. So he need to know when user picks the call and when anything changes in the state. So how do you put something of that nature?
Hold on. Okay, let's share the converse.
Well, I haven't particularly tried to do anything at that level to listen for when a user takes a phone call. But I believe that there are some states with the telephony manager API. I'm looking at the documentation and I'm seeing phone states changed. There are probably some states. I'm not sure if it's actually possible to know when the user picks up a call, but I will suggest going through the documentation of the telephony manager class. I can send the link to the organizers of the call and they can forward to you later to look into it. But I really don't know if it's possible to know when a phone that, like, when a phone call is being answered, unless your app is actually a phone app. That might be possible because of some permission things.
Okay, well, to add to that, I would also want to say I haven't done anything with telephony yet, but it would have been nice to also see what the person had tried and maybe come with options of like what to do, not just like dropping the questions, because that's also part of what they would experience in like Android dev. There are a lot of things you don't know, but if you need to ask for help, I think you also need to state what you've tried first. And yes, I also need to look it up after this call too.
Yeah, so like in excess, nobody is actually a value of knowledge. So everybody has to check it out. It's something we do day in, day out. So I think once we're done with the call, I could get the document from Segun and then send you those documents. So the next question, the person didn't actually post his name. He asks that, okay, when working on a project and you're using Kotlin, if you're stuck on how to implement a particular feature in the language, do you usually have to swap back to Java?
Okay, no, you don't go back to Java. Who goes back to Java? Really? Okay, so I think not everything will work as it used to work in Java. I was still trying something with Espresso recently where the direct conversion didn't work. And then I had to go online. I was like, okay, so what is wrong? And I found the correct implementation. But since I think the conversion is like pretty out of the box. I don't think there would be anything. I don't think there'll really be anything you need to do so far. I've been writing for 1 year so far that you won't be able to do in Kotlin. In fact, to your advantage, it will be easier to do with Kotlin than Java. The only problems you might experience might be with the interrupt, but once you've conquered that, then those issues shouldn't pop up again.
Yeah.
So Segun, are you saying anything?
Yeah, I'm here. So if you're running into a problem in Kotlin, for example, you're building something and you're sure it's not a Kotlin related problem, chances are like you'll have the same problem in Java. So switching back to Java will not solve the problem for you unless it's a thing with the language. For example, you're trying to mock a final class with something that is like with Mockito without using the final thing. It's going to happen in any language you use, even if you're using Java. So yeah.
So in excess, it doesn't. It's based on what you're trying to implement. You probably don't have a good handle. From Moyin what he's seen is the documentation that explains that same thing. So he just had to go back to Java if you do the same. Okay, so let's so we're having a lot of questions. Some questions are actually out of school. So so the next guy, Deuni, he asked, do you feel threatened by the rate in which Android application, hybrid applications are growing?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
So he asked, like a user asked, do you feel threatened by the rate in which hybrid and Android hybrid applications are growing? As an Android developer, you build the natives and then you came to realize many people are building hybrid. Are you threatened by that?
Okay, I think I'll go for that. I would say it always depends on the use case. There are some use cases that hybrid apps would be more useful than native Android apps, and those might be instances where, let's say, a company wants to like build a quick prototype and then wants to have like a wide range of users. But there will always be companies that will need your Android development skills, and I think those are the ones you should look out for. This hybrid native world has been from time immemorial, since when I was learning to program, and I still have a job today. So I think that you should just look out for people who need the skills you want, and then stop worrying about whether or not the hybrid developers are going to chase you out of the market very soon.
Okay. Segun?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the best way to look at these things are to look at them as tools. So yeah, the goal is actually to solve the problem, not with the tool that you're using. So you shouldn't feel threatened by some other tool that people use to solve the same problem. In my opinion, yeah, there's always a use case, like when you said, for every tool out there.
Okay, so nice. So our next question is from someone. I don't know why people like posting anonymously, but like the question was actually sweet. So he was like, or she was like, or they were like, how did it feel like in your first job as an Android dev? Or should I repeat
Maybe
myself?
Segun should answer that. No, I heard you. Maybe Segun should go first.
Well, at my first job, so it depends. For example, my first job was at a small startup. We were a team of 5. The whole team was 5 people. Yeah, I felt alone sometimes, like I was thrown into the deep end without any help from anywhere. But on the flip side of that, I think it kind of helped me to be able to find my way through some situations and also to ask for help from external people. But generally, I feel in hindsight, I feel very accomplished about my first job because it was a huge learning experience for me. And I think that is what first jobs are usually like. Like it's when you gain a lot of experience to be able to move forward on your own.
Yeah, I agree with that too. I was the only Android developer at my first job, but my first job didn't mean that I had just started learning how to program in Android. I had been building apps in school, so I had quite a bit of experience, but I don't think I want to look at the code I wrote then. But I think that it's a learning curve, and well, the aim is to keep growing, right? So hopefully two or three jobs down the line, you'll be a much better Android developer than you were in your first job.
So I actually not like the part you said, like you wouldn't actually love to see your first code. Like
That was like a horror movie. I don't want to say what I read there.
So, okay, thank you very much. So we have someone with a question here. He said, like, what's the most threatening thing about developing Android apps, and how do you cope with it?
What's the most threatening?
Yeah, what's the most threatening thing? So, like, what's the craziest thing that can happen when building Android apps?
Fragments.
Fragments, yes, fragments.
I don't know. I think Android dev is just like any other developer role. I don't think there's like, I don't know. I don't think there's anything too distinct about the process we go through that makes it that threatening. And one thing I'm forever grateful for is like the Android community. So I don't think there's any deep end you'll swim to that you won't find at least one article or one link or one resource or even someone to talk to that won't help you, that won't be able to help you out. So I don't think it's as threatening as it looks per se.
Yeah. Yeah, I also want to add one more thing, like the rate at which things change in Android is sometimes frightening for me, because like you imagine not doing Android for 6 months, you come back and it's like a new world entirely. So like it's always frightening for me to like the thought of not being in contact with the development world makes me worry that if I say I have to go like 8 months or 9 months under the to go underground, and when I come back, a lot of things would have changed. But the good thing is once you have your base knowledge down, you'll be able to adapt to whatever changes.
So it's actually whole story for everyone. Okay, so thank you very much, Segun and Moyin. So our next question is okay, an Android question. I said, do you think it's necessary for an Android developer to be good or familiar with Node.js? Like, is it necessary?
So it's not compulsory, but it's always good to have an idea of other fields. There's something Jake Wharton, I can't believe I'm quoting Jake Wharton. There's something Jake Wharton always says that he ranks developers according to how much expertise they have in other fields. Although I don't know Node.js, but I think that apart from the Java and the Kotlin, it's nice to also dabble into other platforms and see how things work and maybe even apply the knowledge into your Android dev. But it's totally not compulsory because I don't know Node.js and I still have a job. Yeah.
So, Segun, do you want to say something?
No, she said it all.
So nice. Okay. Our next question. Somebody has question on testing. Yeah. So Abdul Majid asks, what's the best material I can use to provide ideas that you and about use cases during unit testing on Android? Should I repeat myself?
Yes, please.
So he's asking for the best material that provides use cases for unit testing on Android.
Well, I think
use cases. Do they mean use cases?
That'll have to come from the code itself, not the unit testing framework, I think. Like the use cases are based on the code and not whether you are doing unit testing.
Yeah, so, the question appears a bit ambiguous to me. But I think, I don't know, but if I could take a guess at what the person is trying to ask is, how do they know what to test for? Is that, maybe that might be correct. Like, what are the scenarios or use cases they are testing for in their app. But
yeah,
if
something of
that's
that.
yeah, if that's what they're saying, then I think Google has an extensive Google samples repository that contains architectural samples for Android, and all of the samples there are really well tested, and it can be a good place to start learning how to test.
So, okay, thank you very much. So that looks like that question has been answered. So Sadiq Hassan asks a question. His question goes like this: one problem with learning any language is self-motivation. How do you encourage beginners and intermediate Android developers to focus on the part? Did you get me?
No, can you come again, please?
Okay. So the question is, he said, the problem with learning any new language is self-motivation. So how will you encourage a beginner or an intermediate Android developer to focus on the part?
Wait. Do you want to go?
So for me, it's simple and it's not simple because like I know the stuff I should be doing and I'm not doing any of them. So things change like really fast. I have 2 browsers filled with Android articles I haven't read yet. I have a pending Android article I haven't written yet. And there's still my 9 to 5 that I have to do every day. But maybe looking beyond, like focusing on what you want to achieve will push you to like read up stuff and always try to like keep ahead of your game. If your aim is keeping ahead of your game, then you would always want to look for stuff to make you up to date and give you more knowledge. And then if you have stuff that you need to share, you would also need to like write articles and stuff to like let people also benefit from the knowledge you have. So I think once your aim is like to be a very good Android developer, then you have to find yourself practicing these things in no particular order.
And also for me, like it's almost like a thing of self-discipline. Like if you need extra things to motivate yourself to learn a new language, then 2 things: either you're not really interested in it, or you don't have things to do with it. Like you don't have like a project to do with the language. So what I would recommend is to find a project to do with the language you're learning.
Oh, okay, nice. I guess that question has been answered. Yeah. So so I think this question is okay. Let me take a more Android question before coming back to that. Mupa asks a question. He was like, what do you think moving from Android to React Native, since React Native helps to build apps on both iOS and Android? So, anybody?
Okay, so I think it's still down to the hybrid versus native apps debate. Like some companies would actually need what's it called, cross-platform apps, would prefer cross-platform apps to like native apps. And of course, we all know that like, even if you're like the best developer out there, you also have to align your knowledge with what the company wants, right? So if like there's a use case where there needs to be a hybrid app, then I think React is worth looking at. I also think Flutter too can work in those use cases, but there are always scenarios where one or the other is needed. And I think the best platform should be used in any of those cases.
Segun, you want to say anything?
Nope. She said it all.
Okay. Okay, so we have another question. As a beginner in Android, do you advise I start with Flutter by Google, or I should stick with, is it Java? But what he wrote is, should he stick to what do you call it, Android Studio, or he should learn using Flutter?
Those are two different things, I think. Flutter is a platform on its own. Android Studio is just an IDE.
Yeah, so from what I understand, his question is supposed to be, okay, should he stick to Java or should use Flutter?
They are still two different things. Flutter is not a programming language. Flutter is like a cross-platform development tool on its own, and Java is just like a programming language. So there's still a disconnect in that question.
Yeah, I kind of agree with what Moyin said, but I think what the person is trying to ask is, should they continue with native development, or should look at Flutter for cross-platform development? And if that is the correct question, then my answer will be to not get carried away easily, because I've seen a lot of questions here that suggest that people are distracted by everything that comes off as new in the Android world, and that is like a wrong way to go about it, because new things will keep coming out and you can't keep dumping your old stuff for the new ones. And I don't think you should leave something midway to learn another thing, because by the time you're almost midway in that new thing, there's another thing that's new. So you can't keep leaving things halfway because there is something that is newer and there's a lot of buzz around it.
Don't accept accepts Nigerian cards or what? Moyin.
Okay, so I didn't hear you well, but I was looking through the questions, and I think they're asking about paying the $25 registration fee.
Yes.
Okay, I just did the conversion with our current exchange rate, and that's about 9,000 naira. I think you can use, when I paid for it, which was like 4 years ago, I think, I paid with my Naira card, my normal ATM card, and it went through. So I think that, I don't know if that still works, but that should be able to work.
Okay, okay. Segun, you want to say anything?
No, I didn't really hear the question.
So he was actually asking, he was complaining of the difficulty paying on the platform. So how did you register yourself on the platform with the $25 charge?
One, I don't have my own app on the Play Store.
Wow, so like that's interesting.
Yeah, I think if you have a USD denominated card, you should be able to register. I think the problem is because the federal government of Nigeria placed a ban on, I forgot what it's called, but dynamic currency conversion or something like that. That's why some cards don't work. But if you're able to get a USD card, like a DOM account card or something like that, you should be able to.
I think butter card should work.
Yeah, but I don't want. I don't want to say that before they say I'm advertising.
I don't use them. I just thought like it might
Yeah,
be
I use
beneficial.
Buttercard, and I'm almost sure it will work.
Oh, okay, nice. So the next question, somebody asks, as an expert Android developer, how often do you build apps based on a particular architecture? Should I go by it again?
I think I got it. I don't know if Moyin did.
Yeah, I did.
Okay. Well, my answer to this is that architecture is not something you change like every other day or every week or something. It's something like if a lot of thoughts go into before you select what architecture or pattern you want to use in your app. And ultimately, the goal for whichever architecture you choose is to have a maintainable code that is easy to understand, easy for new developers to work with. And once those influence your decisions at the beginning of your project, I think you should be able to go through the life cycle of the app or somewhere where you have kind of extended the possibilities for that architecture you chose before you really consider doing something else. So yeah, I don't think it's a common thing to change architectures of a single app too often.
Okay, well, I read that to mean that like you build different apps. So like how do you determine what architecture to go with? But at work we use MVP for our app. But if I was to like start a new app today, I think that just out of curiosity, I would like to explore all the shiny stuff. So I most likely won't use MVP. So I think that also depends on use case. Sometimes MVVM might be a better option for you than MVP. And then there's also this new kid called MVI. So I think just like having an idea of how everything works and what works best for you for that particular instance would work out fine.
Hello, guys. So I'm going to take it up from here. I think while having some technical issues from his end. So there's another question here that says, as an expert Android dev, how often do you build apps based on a particular architecture? Has that question been asked?
Yes, it has.
Okay, so
I think,
okay,
let me help you out. I think I see a question about, what was the question? Sorry, one moment. Okay, yeah. What precautions are there to assure the developers' protection on the apps they make? Okay,
yeah,
so while I'm not entirely sure what developers' protection is, I think it's also a great time to like talk about ethics and how to how to also put ethics in mind and before building any feature, regardless of like who requests it, to make sure that you're not causing further harm down the line. I think I'll just divert it to protecting your users instead of like protecting the developers.
okay, great. Achago, do you have anything to add to that?
Actually, yes. So it's still in the line of ethics, but there is something that I found out recently. I forgot how I found out that you can actually still go to jail if you write code that your boss asked you to write and turns out to be something that you could go to jail for. So even if they ask you to write it, you should really be careful. Um, so yeah, I'm not sure there is anything to protect you from what you actually do. So the best is to protect yourself and not do things that are wrong to do, basically.
So sorry everyone, I just lost my connection for no reason, like no explainable reason. So okay, next question. Thank you very much, Chioma, for taking you to our lives. So we have Sadiq Hassan again. Will you recommend going through the pain of trying to write an optimized code as a beginner, or write a working code now and optimize later?
Segun, will you go for that?
Yeah. So it really depends. First of all, like you can almost never write anything perfect. There will always be improvements for how you do things. So as long as what you have written, the code you have written, it doesn't have a negative impact, I think you're good to go. Then you can come back to revise later. But if by optimized, you also mean not just the performance wise, but in terms of how clean the code is or stuff like that, I will recommend to, because this is the human aspect of coding. Most times you're not writing code alone. So if you're trying to implement something really quick and you write code that is difficult for your teammates to understand or maintain, it's a bad thing to do. So I would, in that kind of scenario, I would suggest to actually write good code, no matter how long it takes, but not necessarily the most performant code, because there is always things to improve upon. Once there is no negative impact, then I think you're good. It doesn't have to be perfect at the first, at the initial levels.
Okay. Moyin, anything?
Well, yeah, there's like a slogan I follow: make it work, make it right, and then make it fast. So it might take you longer to push out something, but like if you can make it work, then you can have something to make right. Because if it's not even working, then what do you want to optimize? So maybe make it work right, and then now focus on like making it performant and stuff.
Wow, that was actually cool. Oh, so nice. So our next question is from Celestine. He asks, how do you secure an app URL inside an Android app, since an attacker can decompile your app and get access to the app URL and API calls? So should I repeat myself?
I got the question. I'm not sure if Moyin did.
So it's stuff like API. So I think stuff like API secrets, some keys. How do you protect those keys from an attacker getting access to them?
Well, I can take this one. In my opinion, it's almost impossible to make things hidden from an attacker. You can only make it harder. That's the first thing you should accept. But while at it, you should know there are some things you should not do. For example, starts from your version control system. You should not put your API secrets and things like that in the version control system. Also, you should use ProGuard. ProGuard is a free tool that helps you to obfuscate your code. Using ProGuard is no guarantee that it can't be reverse engineered. It can always be reverse engineered. It just makes it harder, and it renames all your variable names, so the attacker doesn't know exactly what is your API key. So it just takes them a little longer, makes it harder for them to find your API keys. Also, there's, if possible, depends on what system you're working on, you could consider doing some kind of authentication systems. So you have your secret keys and public keys. So you exchange the tokens and then use the exchange token to make a request for the actual secret you need. I mean, that's more complicated, but it provides some certain level of security. And once you discover your keys have been compromised, you can block it on your authentication server, so it can't be used anymore. Things like that. Also, there's a lot of discussions on Stack Overflow about the best way to do that. There's also another approach about using using the NDK, the native libraries, to save your secrets, because the native things are binaries that you can just execute and you cannot view the source code. That is not entirely true. You can view the source code, it's just very hard. I mean, so it's almost impossible to prevent that, but you can just make it as hard as it can get.
Okay, well, I agree with that, but I think the basics is just like ensuring the first step rather is ensuring that the basics are in place. Like Segun said, the ProGuard and making precautions of what you put on version control and stuff. And I think once you've done that, you really don't need to go as far as the NDK.
Okay. So thank you very much. So let me see what question is available here. Oh. Just give me a minute. I can't see any reasonable question, and I don't want to believe we're done. Okay, so somebody asked another personal question. I don't know if you feel like answering or not. So he was asking, so how many years of experience do you guys have in Android development? I'm not really sure that's actually important, but like, feel free to answer if you feel like.
Okay, so this is a hard one because I usually ask if you're asking of like years before I started real work. I started coding in, I think, 2013, 14, and so I picked up the first thing I knew about Android in about 2013, I think, and I've been building on it consistently. So if you're asking about when like I started learning anything about Android, I'll say 2013. But then official work experience started about 3 years ago. So it all depends. But then I don't think any of that like really matters. But the important thing is to always keep learning. If I had all those experiences and I'm not keeping myself up to date, then nobody cares how long I've been in the field for.
Segun?
Yeah, I totally agree with Moyin. There's I don't think it really matters how long you've been doing it. I think what matters is that you are consistent in it and you keep learning. So I'm not going to say exactly how many years I've been doing it. If you want to find out, like, I'll find my CV somewhere online. But yeah, because it doesn't really change anything. It doesn't add any serious piece of information. There's nothing that says you won't. There's nothing that stops you from gathering as much knowledge as I have in a year or something. So I don't think the information matters for anything significant. Yeah.
So in excess, the number of years you spend doing learning doesn't actually count. It's how deep are you able to learn in that period of time.
Pretty much, yes.
Yeah. So so now I think we're done with Android questions for now. But somebody has a question. The question was like, as a developer in Nigeria, how did you cope with internet access and electricity issue?
Okay. Oh, how did you?
Yeah, how did you cope when learning Android? Like
Well,
learning
that
how
should
to
be for.
build it.
Well, that should be for the person that used to cope and is no more coping.
Well, first, I think unless you are actually in a very, like, maybe you're in a remote location, I'm not sure internet and electricity is too much to consider. For example, while I was in school, the school had pretty good electricity supply, so I didn't struggle with internet with light in school. I did struggle with internet, but luckily I found my way around it. But in case you're not able to do that as well, there are a couple of things that the GDG in Nigeria does. They give you the resources in a CD in a DVD format that you could bundle and use. I agree that things change a lot and updates may be required, but I don't think that is sufficient an excuse to not get things working. Yeah, I think it's just going to be harder. It's not totally impossible. There are times I've had to go to cyber cafes to get things done. So it's just harder. It's not impossible. So I don't want to dwell too much on the challenges that exist because they are there. Just dwelling on them will not solve anything, but just try to find a way to solve your own personal problems, even if it means going to a cyber cafe or going to a hub or going to a friend's house where they have power or something like that. Just make it work for yourself.
Okay, nice. So thank you very much for shedding more light on this. So like it's an issue we all face. If you're a developer in Nigeria, you always have to face that. But then one thing I learned is you just need to learn how to solve. That's your own personal issue. You're learning to be a developer to solve problem. So it's actually one of the problems. It's the first problem you need to solve for yourself before even going out to solve for anyone for any reason. So I think we're done for today, and it's 4 o'clock. Thank you very much for joining in. So we just want to appreciate everyone for joining. We had about 50 viewers, and it's been pretty well. Thank you very much, Moyin, for joining in. Thank you very much, Segun. It's usually interesting to have you here.
Yeah. Thanks for inviting us. Yeah.
Yeah. So
thank you too.
Is there another thing?
Yeah, there are some links I promised to share. I guess I will give them to you after the call, and you can forward them to the owners of the questions.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.